Hey, everybody, welcome to Crackpot, the podcast where each and every week we dive into a different conspiracy theory and we discuss the merits or the demerits of each. We're your hosts. I'm Tim.
And I'm Zach.
Hello, Zach.
Welcome back, my man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. How are you? How's it going? How you feeling?
Doing both well and good in general.
As established.
Yeah. But, you know, it's kind of the same old here. Same old, same old.
Good.
Springtime, loving that, obviously.
Good, man.
Wait, how are you, Tim?
Oh, thank you. I'm all right. Appreciate it. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
At time of recording, you're all right.
At time of recording, I'm neither great nor awful.
Fair enough.
Which is pretty much always. I got an episode here for you. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought as a grown adult person I would be having this conversation for thousands of people to tune in and listen to. But I got to say, man, I really, really like this.
You've been you've been hiding things from me. You refuse to tell me what it's about. Like, this is
You
for real.
know what it's about.
Well, I have to assume aliens. Just I can see a book cover.
You can see the book cover.
But that's literally it. Like, you're like, no, just wait till the show. I'm like, okay, fine. So I have no idea, honestly, what we're getting into here.
Here's the title as I see it. We'll work it out in post. We'll run it past the board. Aliens are actually time-traveling humans. Thoughts?
I'll let that sink in.
No. I want to hear everything.
Aliens are time-traveling humans.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, this would imply somebody somewhere figured out how to be a time traveler.
Yes.
Also that they decided to come back and not be looking like humans. Like, they could be grays, or they could be like little, kind of elvish type creatures. You hear about these like reptilian type of aliens. Also these like ones that look like centipedes and stuff.
Totally.
And these are all humans that are time travelers?
I got it all covered.
Woo!
I got it all covered. Anything else? Any other major concerns, or I'm just...
well, everything. I mean, like, what else do you even have to say? Like, it sounds patently absurd.
It sounds patently absurd. We have officially jumped the shark. I think I've said that like 7 times now. Yeah. It's just bonkers. Yeah. It's just absolutely bonkers, right? Like, the whole thing. Like, why are we even...
Well, also, there's some other questions, too, which is, it's like, why? First of all, why? Second of all, like, none of these aliens, from what I understand, after having done this show for years now, have told anybody about this. Like, you'd think they'd come out and be like, well, hey, look, we're actually you in the future, but we're coming back. So I just would say at the outset, this is at like 0.0001% believability.
Yeah. I have officially said many times, anyone who says they know all the answers about basically anything, I just don't agree. It's like no one knows. It's all crazy. Like, it's fun to talk about, but like, come on, no one really knows.
How do you know that?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Basically, generally speaking, I got done with this book, and I'm like, you know, for the first time, this makes a lot of sense.
No way.
I am not joking. This is not a show, man. Like, everything starts to line up. Like, everything starts to make sense. And it's like, okay, I think I get it now. And I mean, hey, look. Fully aware that, like, next week I'll read another book and I'll have another harebrained idea. Like, I get that. That being said, like, I just, in this moment of time, like, yeah, I think I get it.
So, oddly enough, I got a phone call just now from To the Stars Academy.
Tom, what do you think, buddy?
You figured it out, dude. They're looking for you. They're coming for you.
Okay. The book. Look, when you're a guy like me doing a podcast like me, you get the wildest Amazon book recommendations when you pull up your Amazon page. This one popped for a couple of weeks, and I was like, oh, what the heck? You know.
That's actually a pretty good book cover too.
And there's more on the back
the
too.
Genre.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's interesting. No, it actually,
So you got like the evolutionary, you got the chimps and the humans and so on. And then at the far end, you got the alien standing there and a flying saucer above them. The book, if you're not watching along at home, is called Identified Flying Objects, a Multidisciplinary Scientific Approach to the UFO Phenomenon, written by Dr. Michael P. Masters. Okay? Dr. Michael P. Masters is a professor of biological anthropology specializing in human evolutionary anatomy, archaeology, and biomedicine. This is actually a very dense book. This was not easy to read.
It looks like almost like a college textbook.
He's a college professor. Yeah. I mean, he's a doctor, a doctorate. But this I like my books like John Keel books, where it's like, it's fun, it's goofy, it's it has a narrative kind of, it's mysterious. And I flipped this open and I just set it down after like a night. I'm like, it's too much. I don't have the brain space. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just, it takes a different headspace to read this. That being said, if you find this fascinating, I highly recommend this. Dr. Michael P. Masters. First and foremost, I will continue, probably for the rest of my life, to refer to these entities as aliens because it's easy to say. And that's where it is in my brain. He says that we should not call them aliens. We should not call them extraterrestrials. We should call them extratempestrials, which means of a different time. So we should also not call them UFOs because they're not unidentified. They are actually identified, and those discs are actually like time machines, for lack of a better word. Okay?
I dig.
All right. Just come along with me for a little bit, and I think I may not get you to 100, but I think I'll get you above 0. All right. Let's start out by just talking about what these entities look like. Generally speaking, okay, so now, in full disclosure, we have videos, we have photographs of crafts, be they Tic Tacs or be they flying saucers or triangles or whatever. More or less, we have pictures of them. We don't have any pictures of aliens. That being, I know. You're kind of like, well, what about that Fox documentary or whatever?
Well, but this is interesting actually, because you're right.
Yeah.
For as many photos of UFOs or UAPs as we have, we don't have a corresponding photo of a quote unquote alien.
Yeah. There's a few floating around out there, like Skinny Bob, so fake, or the alien abduction or autopsy or whatever it was. Okay. So my point is only that we have to go on people's experiences and their descriptions. And by and large, people describe these things as generally the same. Mm-hmm. And what do they look like?
What do they look like?
Well, they have a head.
Yeah.
They have a torso. They have a neck. They have 2 arms, 2 legs, 5 fingers on each hand. 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth.
Humanoid is the term you always hear.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Humanoid, man. Bipedalism, 2 legs, is incredibly, incredibly rare on Earth. Outside of Earth, it's probably more rare. But on Earth, there are between 1.5 and 2 million species living right now. Okay? Of those 2 million species on Earth right now, 20 of them are humanoid or hominids. That is, if you're keeping track at home with your TI-85 calculator, is 0.001% of all living creatures are bipedal. Only one of those has developed technology for interstellar communication. Mm-hmm. Okay? We have 0 reason to believe that another interstellar species would also be a hominid.
I disagree with that, actually.
Okay, why?
Well, because, just to get even more weird, what could explain, in addition to evolution, humans evolving the way that they did? Like if you think about octopuses, right? Go back to the octopuses are aliens episode.
Yeah.
I would say just as likely via panspermia that, octopuses came from a different planet.
Sure.
Maybe what started humans or chimps or whatever did too. And so I wouldn't say there's 0% chance, because it's like to be bipedal, everything else you described as a human, right? Like, I don't think it's zero.
Right. It is impossible for us to prove a negative. We can't say definitively zero because we haven't searched every flipping planet in the universe. But that being said, like, the reason we have 2 arms and 2 legs and a head and a torso and everything else is because of evolution the way it is. And evolution is not just the species itself, like evolving over time. It also has to do with the environment surrounding it. Like, you take just the factor of gravity, for example. So scientists like astrobiologists, which in another life I'm going to come back as an astrobiologist, because, like, how cool would that be? But I mean, they have like computer models where they put in different variables, and it's able to say, like, oh, in this specific scenario, the creature would look like X. But if you just add Earth gravity times like 0.4 or something, like 1.4 Earth gravity, I'm trying to say, they would have more than 2 legs, because the higher gravity, the more legs, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say with this rambling, convoluted train of thought is that it's not just evolution, it's also the circumstances and the environment that contribute to the evolution.
Yeah, it's all related. I mean, that is the definition of evolution anyways, but yeah.
Okay. So in addition to the arms and the legs and everything else, you got a lack of a tail. Like, why wouldn't they have a tail, right? No, I'm serious.
No,
right?
it's just...
This is all just kind of like, well, duh, but they don't have a tail. Like but many primates, many hominids on this planet have a tail. Okay, they don't. They're relatively hairless. They have dexterous hands and fingers. Five fingers on their hands.
Who?
The aliens? Yeah. I mean, that's the way they describe them. Many accounts. Large head, large brain, eyes, nose, mouth, all this sort of stuff. Basically could not exist on a separate evolutionary path in a different solar system on a different planet. What we are, looks so similar to them that it is just beyond uncanny. Okay? That's where I'm starting the framework here. So almost a 0 probability that they would evolve separately from us in a different star, in a different galaxy, in a different planet, and also end up looking nearly identical.
But see, that's where I take a totally different stance. This is where I'm saying I completely disagree, like 100%. Because it's like, look, I keep coming back to panspermia here, which is, okay, perhaps somewhere in a galaxy far, far away, there was something that looks like a human.
Sure.
And it happened to land on 2 different planets with 2 totally different environments.
Not to cut you off, but I mean, the idea of panspermia isn't like an octopus, like riding a comet and landing in the ocean. It's like a microorganism that lands in the ocean.
That's exactly my point, though. So exactly. And so because there is genetic material in that helps then to evolve into what we know today. And so what I'm saying is, because aliens, although there are similarities in appearance, they've evolved differently. So therefore they are the grays, or they are, they're shorter, or whatever the case may be. But what I'm trying to say is, like, perhaps some of the same building blocks of these creatures are the same.
I understand.
Yeah.
And there's really no way that we can prove one way or the other. I understand what you're saying.
I'll do it right now. Watch me. Just kidding.
Sure. Follow me. In addition to that, if that were the case, they would also have to find us among hundreds of billions of stars and planets at the same basic evolutionary stage and travel here and do this. So I'm just going to quote from the book here. The author says, "Too many specific random occurrences went into making us just the way we are. In fact, I would argue that the probability of a fleshy, big-brained, bipedal, pentadactyl, highly intelligent life form arising independently on a different planet orbiting a nearby star is effectively 0.
Okay.
Oh, you put it that way. Now, it is basically impossible to predict human evolution. Okay? I mean, like, we know, we look at fossil records and we look at everything else. We can basically figure out, like, okay, how we got to here. there's no real map to say where we are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, computer models, people smarter than you and I. I know. I'm just going off of what I'm reading. So they type this stuff in and they hit the enter button. They wait, I don't know, a couple days or so, spits out a piece of paper. They tear off the sides. I don't know how computers work. Anyway, they say that human bodies are probably going to get smaller. Our heads are probably going to get larger. Our eyes are probably going to get larger. We're probably going to lose hair. And if you start to look at those factors, it's like, what does that describe? It's like, okay, a smaller, hairless, larger head, larger eyes. It's like, okay, this is kind of getting weird now. Kind of getting interesting.
I see where it's going.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You're with me at least. That's all I ask.
I'm along for the ride.
Okay. And we know that evolution existed. We know that evolution will continue. We have not reached our peak if humans happen to make it out of this century alive, which according to this theory, we do for a very long time, which is one of the reasons I like it, because I'm kind of comforted by it. It's like, okay, we're going to survive 2022 and maybe even 2023.
That's right.
So anyway, I digress. But humans will still evolve. And like I said, reduced body hair, larger brains, reduced facial projection, so smaller nose, smaller mouth, less emotive aspects. Basically, humans will have and will continue to look younger, which is fascinating. I don't know why that is. I'm just going off of what I read here.
Wow.
And yeah, it's
That's
an
cool.
interesting aspect. But I mean, you go back, I know Neanderthals weren't exactly Homo sapiens, but like that lineage and so on and so forth. It's like
so it's funny. Like when you go back and you see footage, like videos or pictures of people from, years ago, right? At certain ages, they look older. I feel like people now look younger.
I think so too, but I also think that's because I turned 40.
Yeah, we're heavily biased
everyone
here.
Looks young. Damn kids.
Seriously.
Get off my lawn. Also, may come as a surprise to some of you, but eventually human amalgamation is inevitable. Like our skin as a species will eventually turn a light brown, or, not making this up, according to the author, Dr. Michael P. Masters, a grayish hue.
Oh, no.
No, I'm like, you play it. We're not talking like 200 years. We're talking like 2,000. We're talking like 20,000 years. We're talking like far into the future.
I get it.
Okay?
I get it, dude.
Okay. Also, interestingly enough, I don't really know how this plays into it, but the larger brain, like evolutionarily speaking, like when we developed a larger brain, it sped up the evolution of the species.
Oh, okay.
And by speeding up the evolution of our species, it made our brain larger.
That actually makes
it was
sense.
just a feedback loop.
Yeah.
And essentially that's going to continue, and the brain will get larger and larger and so on.
Cool.
So basically, aliens, as I'm calling them, with a large head, small body, is evolutionarily accurate if you look at humans in the distant future. The physical traits of the aliens are remarkably similar to humans, and it implies a genetic continuity. So I know you're on the fence or whatever. It's like, oh, of course it could happen anywhere. According to people smarter than us, it is just a byproduct of being on Earth, this gravitation, this close to the sun, this climate, this weather, the fact that we moved out of this that continent into wherever we are now is the fact that we look the way we are, and it is next to zero, if not zero, that it could happen on a different solar system. And even if it did, I know I'm repeating myself, and even if it did, like, how on earth would they find us in the vastness of the universe? So there are differences that you implied at the beginning, like what aliens look like. Sometimes they're 7 foot tall Nordics.
Right, Nordics,
Sometimes they're the small grays and so on and so forth. And he doesn't just gloss over it. He does talk about it. And he says, for all we know, that could be geographic locations of future humans on this planet. Maybe they went to different planets in the solar system, or colonies, or so on and so forth. It could be age, it could be sex, it could be gender. It could also be humans along different points of the human evolution timeline.
Well, that's where my head was at. So if you're going to take this specific theory to its logical conclusion, it's like that could be one of them, right?
And you like maybe insectoids or the reptilians or whatever it might be could be humans like 2 million years in the future.
Yeah.
And they're just working with humans further back along the timeline to come back and study us. Okay. I know this is weird. I know this is out there. I know I'm asking you all to just kind of come along for the ride. So I just want to stop. Any questions, any concerns, anything before we keep going?
Oh, I voiced my questions and concerns so far, as long as you don't mind.
No, man.
All right.
I think you talked about like actual time travel. Like this implies that like we figured out time travel, right?
Correct.
I mean, that is kind of the crux of this whole thing. It's
Exactly.
like, wait a minute. I'm with you on the evolutionary stuff, but like time travel? Come on, man. What's going on?
No, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Physicists mostly agree that we can probably travel through time, but we have not figured it out yet. If you go back like, I don't know, 500 years, 200 years, like scientists, smartest thinkers at the time were probably like, yeah, we can probably fly, but we haven't figured it out yet because we don't understand physics well enough to do that yet.
Totally. Yep.
But
Yep.
like birds could do it. I mean, I guess I can't really point to a scenario where like, well, something's doing time travel. But the point is like, if you look at physics, most physicists agree that it's probably possible. And those that agree say that it's generally the way they understand it currently, backwards time travel is the most likely. But if you can go backwards, then potentially you can go forwards. And I don't need to go off into a tangent that I can barely understand here. I should say, I keep saying most, because most prominently Stephen Hawking says it's like, look, it's impossible. Can't travel time. And
Right.
it's like, okay,
Right.
be hard pressed to find a person living or dead that's smarter than Stephen Hawking. So we should probably at least listen to what he says. And he's like, can't do it. It's impossible.
Yeah, he's pretty definitive on that point.
He is, but not everyone agrees with him. People, once again, much smarter than you and I. The idea that I was able to take away from this is that we basically need to have a unified theory of quantum mechanics. And we don't even have a unified theory of like regular physics
That's right.
yet.
Yep.
And like quantum physics is so far out there that even physicists have a hard time explaining it or even comprehending it because it's just so bonkers. And I won't go into that now, but it's like we need to have a unified theory of it to even grasp how. But that being said, knowledge has never really, like, we're a pretty smart species. If you give us time, we've pretty much been able, we split the atom. Like we went to the moon. Like I know this is different than like actually traveling through time, but it's, when you talk about physics as a whole, it's not, I'm going to argue, not out of the realm of possibilities. Now, the problem with talking about time travel is that we all have a basic understanding of it, and it all basically comes from Hollywood. And most of that, at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, comes from like Marty McFly.
Of course, Back to the Future. Absolutely.
So that theory of time travel is called the multiverse, the many world theory. And it's a lot of people love talking about it. It's very fascinating. It's the idea that like one, you step out of the time machine and you step on a fish and all of a sudden you go back to the future and it's raining toasters and you got a forked tongue. Like anything you do can affect the timeline. And there's many infinite number of universes that exist because there's infinite number of possibilities.
Yes. Yeah.
So therefore, traveling back in time, it's like, well, it's not even a thing because which timeline are you on? John Titor talked about this when we did that episode too. And it's really, if you want to believe that time travel is possible, that is probably not the way the universe works.
That makes sense to me, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
What would have to exist would be the Blocktime theory, which is time, everything always has, does, and always will exist at the same time. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what you say, it's all foretold. Basically, people don't like this because it doesn't make Hollywood movies as fun.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's hard for people to believe or comprehend or enjoy, I guess, because it automatically removes free will. Like if you believe in block time, there's no such thing as free will. Everything is predetermined.
Well, I think it's more like everything's been done.
Everything has been done.
So it's not that it's like predetermined by like a god or a deity, but it's like whatever is supposed to happen has already basically happened.
Yes. And I mean, without going too far out there, but we have to talk about this. It's because time is hard for us to understand because we're three-dimensional creatures. Mm-hmm. Like we have length and width and height, and that's what we see. And every moment, we are able to string it together and we're able to perceive time and think about the future and remember the past and maybe sometimes be in the moment, but like that's just the way it is. But if everything exists at the same time, we can't comprehend that. We can't experience that because we only live in three dimensions. So if you take it, if we step back and we just say we're two-dimensional creatures, right? Mm-hmm. We only see width and height, and that's it. This is a common thing that physicists talk about when they talk about this thing. Like it's called like flatland. Okay, so if you are in flatland, if all of a sudden a three-dimensional creature walks through with width, you would see, let's say a ball. Someone throws a ball through flatland, a round globe, right? You would see it first as a point, and then the circle would get larger and larger and larger, and then it would get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it would vanish. And you'd be like, what just happened? Like it right. appeared and then vanished. I don't know where it went. And you'd be like, what's going on? What's happening?
Yeah.
Things aren't supposed to appear and disappear. Zach, do you know what appears and disappears in the sky when people report UFOs?
Yeah, I know.
They appear and they vanish. Mm-hmm. Why? Potentially because they are transversing the fourth dimension. Whereas from their perspective, they're actually traveling. Like you and I would walk from one room to the other. Whereas for them, or from our perspective, it's just like, poof, it's gone. It just vanished. I don't know. I was looking at it. And then I went to grab my camera and it vanished. Mm-hmm. It's like, what?
Well, this actually makes a lot of sense. And this is very believable here.
Yes.
This makes sense to me.
So one of the main things people point to when they point to time travel, like the problems, the concerns, like the logical fallacies that exist, would be a causality problem. And a causality problem, best described with an example. So let's say all of a sudden, Zachary Nigel from the year 2050 shows up moments after I leave and I drive and I go home and he says, Zach, I want to show you the book that you wrote in the year 2040. It made you a bestseller. You won a Nobel Prize. You were able to quit the podcast and retire from your job and go on a speaking circuit. It's a really good book. Here, go ahead and have it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then you have the book.
Yep.
And then in the year 2040, you're like, oh, crap, I never sat down to write it. Well, maybe I don't have to write it. Maybe I can just give the publisher this finished copy of the book. And then all of a sudden, you win a Nobel Prize, you quit the podcast, you quit your job, you go on the speaking circuit, you're a multimillionaire. Who wrote the book? How did the book get written? if you look at the Blocktime theory, it doesn't matter. Like, yes, it hurts your brain to think of, but it doesn't matter because the book always existed.
Yeah.
And always will exist.
Exactly. That's why I was saying earlier, it's not really about like, your life hasn't truly been predetermined. It's just basically already happened.
It's already there.
Yeah.
There was I'm going to get this quote way wrong and everything wrong about it, but the gist is true. There was a physicist a while back. He said, look, if you gave me a powerful enough computer and the location and speed and direction of every single atom in the universe, I could predict the future. And what's fascinating about that is it's like everything's kind of predetermined. It's like, yes, I just snapped my fingers, but I did that because I wanted to. And like, there's no other way I would have gone about it. And that's a dumb example, but maybe you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's like
for sure.
everything, you do everything because you do everything.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, I mean, we don't need to get into the whole thing of like not having free will, despite what Rush says. It's like, oh, maybe you don't, and that's okay. So, all right. The other thing, to kind of go back to interstellar travel and so on and so forth, like if they're not time travelers, if they're not time traveling humans from Earth or nearby, it's implying that they are like interstellar travelers, right?
Totally. The conventional view.
They are extraterrestrials, not of this Earth, right? And if you really break that down, man, like, I know I just got done saying that, like, physics, it's like, who knows? Anything's possible, right? Yeah. But it's like, there's some things, like, it's really, really hard to travel long distances.
Totally.
And pretty much nothing we've figured out yet goes faster than light, right? And it's really hard, and it takes an enormous amount of energy to even come close to a fraction of the speed of light. So when you say like 4 light years away, it's like, yeah, okay, well, if you travel at the speed of light, you're going 4 years, but like, you're not going to come anywhere close. And probably, no matter how advanced of a civilization you are, it's going to take an enormous amount of time. That being said, even if they do, even if they're able to figure it out, even if they're able to, go into suspended animation and travel for thousands of Earth years across stars and galaxies and everything else, it still affects time on Earth. So, or where they come from, I'm trying to say. So like if two people, okay, let's say you have twins on Earth, right? Mm-hmm. And one goes into a rocket ship and goes super fast off in another direction, and then comes back. For the person that traveled, it only took a year. Yep. Let's say. For the person on Earth, it took 10 years. The person on Earth will age faster. So whenever they get back to their planet, it's like, what are they, like, what's left? What are they reporting to? Like, what's happening? It's like those basic parts of physics still exist.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
right.
It's like, what are they doing? And like, at the end of the day, they're just stopping by, and like, they're not even saying hello. They're just picking us up off the ground and like poking us and prodding us and dropping us back. For what? And I know we're not going to figure out like aliens, motives in the next half hour, but it's still like, why?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Okay. So we talked about the evolutionary timeline, how they look remarkably, uncannily like humans. We talked about how time travel is probably possible. Also, sorry, before I go further, I completely ignored part of my notes here. Physicists and people that study this have said that if we can, when we do, harness the energy to actually traverse time, the way we do it, and like even not even time traveling, but like actually floating in the air. Like if you're going against gravity and using potentially electromagnetic force, like the shape that is best utilized to do that is actually like a saucer shape.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's like, okay, all right, well, throw that in there too. Okay, sorry. So we talked about time travel. We talked about evolution. Let's actually talk about the interactions that humans have said that they experience when they are abducted by these aliens. So again, we are going off of just people's memories, people's accounts, and we have a whole episode on this. Was that on the Patreon show, or was that a free? I think it was a free feed.
Which episode? I mean,
the actual alien abduction show.
Oh,
not Barney and Betty, but the one with John Mack and everything. I think go back and look. I am 99% sure that is available to everyone listening to this. There are a lot of people who claim to have been abducted in one form or another. And they all seem to describe the same basic thing. And without harping on it too much, these are people that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. They come from different races, different religions, different continents, everything. And it's happened, I mean, criminy, you can go back hundreds of years and there's, myths and legends of people talking about these sorts of things. So it's not just since like the flying saucer, thing that happened in the 1940s. But all of these basic things, these interactions tend to be the same basic scenarios. And I love this quote here. And this was included in the book here. Whitley Strieber, he famously wrote Communion, of course, one of the most famous abductees. He said, and this is a quote from his, I think it's from Communion. I could be wrong, but it's a quote from Whitley. He says, "If I had been asked, I would have said that the nature of my experience indicated that these visitors hadn't been here too long and that I have been studied by a team of biologists and anthropologists." Basically, if you look at it, these interactions, they're medical in nature.
They are. They usually are.
Yeah. And if you dig into that a little bit more, they seem to be anthropological and biomedical research with a main objective. So whether it's the implant phenomenon that people talk about, like probably a tracking or homing mechanism to see where you go on a daily basis, who you interact with, where you sleep, where you work, all that sort of stuff, or to just the fingernail scrapings, the tissue samples, heck, we don't really talk about this on the show because it's funny, haha, but like the anal probes, like it's a common thing that people talk about, but that is something that humans do when they track animals in the wild. Is you get a fecal sample, and that allows you to see what they're eating and what their digestive system is like. It's simple biomedical procedures that these things are doing, and they have a sampling procedure. They appear to be doing research. They're using instruments just like we would do in a lab setting. They're using sedation or tranquilization methods. There's exam tables. Something as simple as an exam table. It's like that is kind of it. And behind all of that, and this is weird to say, but there seems to be a doctor and patient interaction when the humans aboard these crafts and the aliens interact. It's like, what are you doing? We're doing this. Don't worry, you'll be fine. We'll put you back. You won't remember this. And then they remember it later. Or, why is it like this? What do you these questions and then answers. There's comforting. Why are you so frightened? You'll be okay. That's a common thing they're saying, It is odd. And what Dr. Masters is hypothesizing is basically these are humans from the future that are coming back to study their ancestors.
And so because they're using techniques that are similar to what humans have used over time,
yes,
like you described, the patient-doctor relationship, the examination table, the tools, trying to understand, humans very similar to how humans have studied other animals.
Right.
Too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence kind of a situation.
Basically, let's just say, for example, we went back, 10,000 years. Heck, you could even go back like 500 years, right? We had our little time travel machine. We decided to go back and pick someone up off the street and just put them on a table and start doing tests. It's like, we're going to have syringes. We're going to have a thermometer, electronic thermometer, right? We're going to blood pressure. I don't know, all sorts of stuff. And like each one of those things is like super common. Like anyone basically alive on this planet right now is going to know what each one of those things are, or at least recognize them. And if they don't recognize them, they're going to be within the frame of reference. But to someone even like 500 years ago, even, 1,000, 10,000 years ago, you start to wonder, it's like they're going to look at that stuff and it's going to be just like bonkers. It's going to be absolutely out of this world, foreign technology that they can't even comprehend.
But doesn't that cut against the theory here anyways?
How so?
Well, I mean, it's like you go back a couple of thousand years or a couple hundred years and it was different, right?
Yes.
And so therefore, to take that a step further, you go into the future.
Okay. Yeah, I think I know what you're saying, but I mean, the interactions, the abduction experiences that people are talking about, it's like they will wave a wand over them, and then it's like the pain in my shoulder was gone, or my cancer was removed, or something like that.
Right.
It's like I don't know. Show me that technology. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, no,
right?
That's fair. That's fair. That makes sense to me. Yep.
So, but behind that is just the basic species interaction. It's like, yes, you comfort the patient, you put them on a table, you minimize their pain, you try to control their stress, and you put them back basically where you found them.
Sure.
All those things, it's like, that all seems societally normal to you and I, but if you take something from a different star system, and you bring them here, like, who's to say they wouldn't just like rip your head off,
discard you?
Yeah,
entirely.
right.
Yeah, I guess I would say, like, look, perhaps they've learned how to handle humans.
Could be,
right?
Could be.
That'd be my guess, but yeah, you're exactly right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, I guess, I mean, the only other thing I can really add to this is that if we had the technology available to us, and I will fully admit that, the person that wrote this book, and for all I know, came up with this theory, is, has an anthropological background.
Sure.
So he, I think, whether knowingly or not, approaches this as they are future human anthropologists doing studies. And there may be hundreds of other explanations. But to me, it does make sense. Because if we had those tools available to us and we went back 10,000, 100,000, a million years ago, and we looked at our evolutionary past and we were starting to figure that out, it would be just a wealth of information. It would give us so much more knowledge, not just about the past, but also how we got to where we were and maybe how we could do things in the future.
Well, think about if you could somehow right now go back and study a live Neanderthal in the actual, like, wild.
Yes.
I mean, that's what this is essentially saying, right? Or whatever it was that was before the chimp or the ape. Look at that creature that eventually evolved, study that.
Exactly. Like, the possibilities are nearly endless.
Yeah. I guess we know the ending, but yeah.
Or the ending's predetermined and you don't have to.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
But I mean, it is wild. And I know, I admire and I thank you for, not, just believing anything I come at you with. But I mean, to me, the evolutionary thing, it's like, I read that, I was like, oh my God, I never even thought about that. It just seems so odd. It's like, not only the fact that they're bipedal humanoids with two eyes and a nose with two nostrils and a mouth and arms and legs, 5 fingers. Like, come on. All that aside, it's like they're able to function on our gravity. They're able to breathe our air. Like, all these things.
Oh, sure.
All these things. It's like, wait a minute. Maybe they're not in the stars. Maybe they're just from the future, and that's how they vanish and appear. That's how they're able to just do the things they do, and they're picking us up and they're putting us back because they're just studying us.
So I would say, of everything that I've heard, I think some of the least convincing arguments relate to, well, they're doing some of the same types of scientific experiments that we would be doing, or they know kind of how to put us back gently and then leave us alone. Like, I don't find those at all convincing.
Okay.
I also would say, like, and I'm just getting this vibe because I haven't read the book, of course, but it's like, he sounds like this doctor was Masters. Is that what it was? Sounds very sure of himself when he says like, oh, 0% chance of this or that couldn't possibly happen. It's like, well, actually, it probably could.
Look, I am also paraphrasing a very smart man and trying to take 300 pages into like a 45-minute show.
Completely. So let me pivot though. I'd say what I do like and what I think is actually convincing is exactly which is, if you think about how evolution is headed, where we're going as a species.
Yeah.
Actually, none of that would surprise me. Smaller head, shorter stature, less hair, et cetera, et cetera. Like, kind of makes sense. Also, the part about, hey, if you're thinking about a two-dimensional space, if we can call it that, how something from a three-dimensional space would somehow appear differently to us, very similar to what the UAP phenomena is. So I find that convincing. So I started at what, like 0.0001?
Yeah.
I'm up to like 5%.
You're up to 5%.
I could go higher. Like I probably would have to read the book.
Sure.
But it makes more sense than I wanted to believe at the outset. It does help that this doctor is apparently well credentialed and studied some of it. Like this, it's not just, Dr. Wacko.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying it's you should believe him just because it's a difficult read. If you don't believe me, read it. I honestly do recommend it. It is complicated, and he does back it up with science. It is peer reviewed. Like this is a scientific
scholarly article.
It book. Absolutely is. Oh. But I mean, if you then start to go back and look at other UAP, UFO, alien encounters with this lens, things start to make sense. I mean, you even take like the Commander Fravor and the Tic Tac. I forget if that was the Nimitz or the
Nimitz. Yep.
But remember when they were flying around and then they're like, okay, go back to the rendezvous point. And it was already, the Tic Tac had already gone back to the rendezvous point. Yeah. Like they
anticipated.
Anticipated. Because, I don't know, maybe they already knew because they were from the future. Yeah. Stuff like that. It's just so bizarre. And it makes, I'm not saying I believe it 100%. I am just saying it is by far the most credible theory I've come across yet. And I'm on the record as saying I think the extraterrestrial idea is just bonkers. And I've mostly landed in the interdimensional theory.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, because I don't know what else, because I'd never come across this. I never thought of this before.
Yeah.
And now that I've just kind of like let this swish around inside my brain for a couple of weeks, I'm like, yeah.
The turntables have turned.
Thank you. Exactly. So I don't know, guys. If this is bonkers and you don't believe it, I want to hear. If this is like, oh my God, I think this makes sense, let me know.
Yeah.
Or let the good doctor know.
Or if you're a time traveling, what was it called?
Extra tempestrial.
Yeah. If you're one of them, tell us. Go on the show.
Tell us first.
Call
or
listener
maybe
line.
You told us earlier and we're not telling the audience. Hard wink.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I already know if you rated, reviewed, and subscribed. but head on over to our Patreon show and sign up there. What's that address again?
Patreon.com/crackpotpodcast.
Yeah, got hundreds of shows over there just like this one to check out. If you like it, you can hear more. Rate, review, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your local astrophysicist about our podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.